everybody, and welcome to another segment of AstrologyAnswers.com's weekly forecast. My name is Terence Gardino. The week begins on Monday, May the 25th. This week there are no major planetary events, so it's relatively calm in that respect, even though the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. As the moon goes through each sign, it's going to be making contact with different planets from that sign, and this creates triggers a lot of mood swings, feelings, reactions. So I'll go through all of that. But let's not forget, there are 4 planets in retrograde. Pluto went at the end of April. And then about 2 weeks ago, responsible business Saturn, relational Venus, and hopeful expansive Jupiter all went retrograde. So that's all on the back burner here. All the retrograde is trying to teach us is, are you reflecting on all these events of the past couple of months? Or are you going to just forge ahead, forget that the past ever occurred, and then because of the retrogrades, some people will be forced to repeat the same experience. So it is with all these retrogrades, it can be a very favorable time for introspection, for reflection on how all this pandemic has affected all of us. Now, let's start with Monday, May the 25th. The moon is in Cancer. Cancer is this self-protective, homebody, nurturing, family-oriented. By the beginning of the day, the moon is going to be favorable with exciting Uranus, like want to get out of our old routines. Even if you are, dealing with home chores or family events, want to shake things up and try something new and different. And then later in the day, the moon is going to be in harmony with Mars. So Mars triggers all this activity, good for physical exercise, good for especially getting a lot of chores done. And if you have any work projects, you're going to have the enthusiasm and the motivation, especially since it's Monday, which is the first day of the work week for many people. On Tuesday, now the moon still in Cancer, but it's going to be in opposition or confrontation to power struggle Pluto by the middle of the day. So this could trigger a lot of tensions and confrontations. But as soon as that all comes to a head, then the moon is opposite Jupiter. So then it's the forgiveness, the insight. So some darkness could show up, our fears could show up, but then the Jupiter, maybe because it's an opposition, that a friend, a loved one provides you with good, wise advice, and it uplifts your spirit. Wednesday, now the moon has moved into more extroverted Leo, where the moon in Cancer is generally more introverted. Extroverted Leo, it's a fire sign, wants the spotlight put on them. And this moon, by the middle afternoon Pacific time, it's going to be in hard angle to Uranus. That could mean some sudden, unexpected surprises on one end of the spectrum, or you are breaking through old stuck patterns and getting really charged and excited about moving forwards. Thursday is interesting because the moon will be void of course for like 22 hours. This is pretty unusual. Many times the moon is void of course for an hour or two or less. I've talked about this usually every week. The moon is void of course when the moon is in the sign, but no longer making any aspects or contacts to other planets in the chart from that sign. So there's no activity. It's good for staying the course. It's good for introspection, but it's not favorable for starting major new projects. Because if you would do a chart for the beginning of that new job, that new project, saying yes to something, and you did a chart for it to describe how this might turn out, the moon is void of course. So the energy is flat, and you don't want to start anything important when the energy is not supporting you. And that goes from 6:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time until the next day, Friday, till 4:40 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Also on Thursday, communication, decision-making, Mercury is entering into more emotional Cancer. Our mind might be on the positive side of Cancer issues. Real estate, home, family, cooking. But this Mercury is going to go retrograde on the 17th of June, still in Cancer. So what that means is this Mercury, instead of being in Cancer for 3 or 4 weeks, it's going to be there for to the early part of August. So a little over 2 months. So it has going to have a real impact where Mercury in Cancer is transiting your chart. This is where you're going to be preoccupied with those energies of that house sector of the chart. What I mean is it falling in your first house? You want to be seen and visible. Is it in your 7th house of partnerships and marriage? Is it in your 10th house of careers? Is it in your 5th house of children or romance? That's what I mean, where your mind could be for the next couple of months focused in one of these areas. On Friday, the moon has left outgoing, extroverted Leo, partying Leo, and goes into Virgo for the next 2.5 days. Virgo is work-oriented, service-oriented, great for volunteering, helping those less fortunate, but on a more individual level, great for getting really focused, get all your work tasks done. And by midday, that moon is going to be very favorable with innovative Uranus. So you could be really open to new learning, new kinds of projects. Saturday, now the moon in Virgo is going to be opposite Neptune and forming a 90-degree angle to Venus. Now, I've talked about this all month, and this is the last of this test. Venus is retrograde, testing relationships, causing us to really reflect and reevaluate our relationships. But it's in conflict with Neptune, meaning we may not know what to do. We may be being indecisive. We may be confused. We may have a bit of anxiety about relationships. The last time the Venus-Neptune was exactly in this hard angle was last week. But now the moon, that is our emotional reactions, is triggering this same dynamics on Saturday, the 30th. So all I'm suggesting is don't jump to conclusions, breathe, don't react. Relationships could be tested again. Sunday, May the 31st. The moon enters into harmony, socializing, diplomatic Libra at 7:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And in the late morning, the moon, sociable Libra moon, will be in harmony with responsible grounding Saturn. Moon Saturn, you're feeling emotionally stable. You might be feeling really want to take on more responsibilities to help other people. And by mid-afternoon, now the moon is going to be in a challenging aspect to Mercury. Mercury is analytical, it's rational, the moon is emotional. So by mid-afternoon, Pacific Daylight Time, you might be caught up in some family, emotional, ego conflicts in the worst case scenario. Or just by yourself, you just might be starting to be a bit emotionally confused because of all this misinformation you're hearing in the media, that it's also being promoted by people with nefarious agendas, and then you get all confused. So maybe mid-afternoon Pacific time, later in the day for the rest of the world, it's just stop and breathe. Don't get all emotional and believe the worst. Before I sign off, I want to remind you I'm available for the one-question offer for a nominal fee. You can find a link to order it in the description box below the video. And if you could put in your time of birth, even an approximate time of birth, that would really be helpful for making predictions. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you next week with my next segment. Until then, have a great week.